Hello, sports fans. It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Welcome to Cleats by Dre. I'm Dre. Let's talk some sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Y'all ready for this?
All right, folks. Looking forward to talking to you after a long weekend. A lot to get to. See what's going on. Best time of year for sports right now. One of them at least. Baseball pennant racing's in full swing. Mets are hot. We'll talk about that in a later pod. Opening weekend of college football in the books. NFL's around the corner. U.S. Open's in full swing. There's also ESPN The Ocho. Slippery stairs. Adult kickball. We'll save those for a wacky world of ESPN Ocho pod at some point. I want to focus on two topics today, though. Notre Dame football and fantasy football, the NFL variety. Yeah, there's a link there. You know, us Notre Dame fans, we've dwelled in fantasy. In fantasy footballers know when to let out a few Our Fathers in their matchups when they come down to the wire. So yes, those Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we potted about them last Friday. We had doom and gloom takes. They had a huge program narrative altering win on Saturday, 23-13 over the Texas A&M team. So I'll ride that high some more. I'll break down what this win and performance means for the rest of the season. And we'll also do a brief fantasy football preview. I'll talk about why I love the game, why it matters, and give my thoughts on the upcoming season. All right, first on to Notre Dame. This win, honestly, I did not see it coming. Last week's guest, Midwest Mike, he didn't see it coming during our preview. No pundit saw it coming nationally. Vegas didn't see it coming. A&M was favored by 3 points. The only ones who predicted it was our other guest from last week, our Irish Aggie crossover James. He knows A&M better than anyone. We maybe should have paid better attention to him when he picked the Irish. And old 89-year-old Lee Corso on College Game Day. What a gem he is. I actually saw a tweet. He had all his picks. Good for him. So what I'll do, I'll give my 5 stars, right? You know, as I watch the game on the Notre Dame guys who punched above expectations. 5 stars. And what this means is like I'm not gonna like. You know, obviously, Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, all Americans, right? Howard Cross, our running backs, we know they're solid. Riley Leonard's running game is solid. Like, if our baseline was 7th in the country, it's these guys. If they show above what their baseline was, we're now talking national title contender. So think of that. Think of above expectation. So 5 stars. We'll go from 5 to 1. Number 5 for me is a wide receiver, Bo Collins. The transfer from Clemson, former 4-star wide receiver, he had 5 catches and 62 yards in a game where neither of those were easy to come by. My first look at him, really, and, you know, he was smooth, he was separating, catch radius. He looked like Plaxico Burress out there. Former Giants fan of me bringing that out. Now, Bo is 6'3", 202. Plex was 6'5", but just the way he moved so smooth on the screen, holding the temper, right? Almost got a 15-yarder, probably should have, on that push-off on the last drive. He was hyped. But look, you know, we talked about it on the pod last week. Notre Dame hasn't had a ton of elite wide receiver talent. I think we said Will Fuller was the last first-rounder. I go back to Mike Floyd as like really one of the last difference makers. If this guy doesn't have to be at that level, but if you can be consistent number 1 target for Riley, that's a big step up. That raises our ceiling. Number 4, I'm going to go to a linebacker, Drake Bowen, the sophomore, our top recruit last year. And really, you know, all the young linebackers. I thought Snead was active, KYA also in the middle. Drake had 4 tackles, but really, I was impressed with his strength. He was unmovable. and his instincts. You really shot at your eye as to how he was moving back the blockers. I honestly can't remember ND having a linebacker in my time watching with the brute strength that he showed. I know, JOK, right, Owusu Kamamura, he had speed and instincts. Manti, instincts and toughness. Jalen Smith was a total package. Bowen is a strong man. And I just love seeing these kind of guys pop because of all the defense, we knew our defense was strong and it showed well overall. Linebacker we may have known least about. So really encouraging development, seeing him not just be able to be on the field, but be a difference maker. Number 3, I'll stay in the defense, is Aiden Schuler. The safety who, reports that he had an amazing camp, a sophomore also, in that secondary that's just been incredible. Again, we know about the guys that have been there, but he showed a good nose around the ball on the run game, has an NFL body already, and then that interception, when they were moving the ball a little bit at the start, A&M was, those great takeaway instincts that a really good safety needs to have, right? Just being in the right spot. Interceptions aren't by accident; they're by anticipation. And what an incredible first, kind of starting showing for Schuler. All right, number 2, we're going to go back to the offense, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and just say overall the running game. We've been a running team for years now. There is nerves with this team how it would fare. But 34 carries, 198 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 2 TDs, and it got better as the game winded down on the road in a hot, hostile environment. Credit to the strength and conditioning program. Credit to the offensive line, that young, maligned offensive line. The running backs showing good shiftiness and instincts. Riley was a big part of the running game till the running backs really busted off. And Denbrock, right, who's coordinating it. Like, that was a staple that we could count on down the stretch. And we love to see that. But what we also love to see, my number 1 star goes to Marcus Freeman, our coach. And for me, it's those in-game coaching decisions and in hindsight, really getting the boys ready to play from the jump. On the decisions, I was nervous at the start, right? The conservatism. Him and Elko being happy to trade, happy to take field goals on the 4th and 3, in kind of tough field goal territory. We had a 6-6 game with 4 field goals. In the second quarter, I have a note, Freeman used a timeout to avoid a delay of game on a 4th and 12 punt. What are you going to gain there? But then in the third quarter, much to my chagrin, my surprise, one of the first drives goes for a 4th and 1 deep in our own territory with a Riley sneak that barely made it. And then I love the second one too. Really bad calls by the refs. He was clearly over the line. The reviews was over the line. I don't know what the ACC officials were doing. But I love this. I love going for a 4th down, especially 4th and 1. He displayed this mix of analytics savvy and level of aggression. Look, the fact is, this Notre Dame team is good. What I've hated about ND coaching going back to the Kelly era, so risk-averse. Watching, what comes to mind? Kelly managing the last playoff game versus Alabama, when they had Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith. They had dudes. And how conservative Kelly was happy to be with the play calling. It's almost like he counted as a win to lose to Alabama 31-14. Hey, we held them to 31. Screw that, man. We want to win. We need high-risk, high-reward plays, even with this incredible defense. Because let's face it, folks, even with this incredible defense, we started as the 7th team in the country. Maybe we're 4th or 5th now. But Georgia and Ohio State, these juggernauts, it's going to be hard to win with this conservative offense. So we need high-risk, high-reward. And 4th and 1, I don't even think that's high risk, but I love to see it because I hadn't seen it before from Freeman. So I really think perhaps one of the more underrated hires of the Notre Dame offseason was just a few weeks ago. What I believe to be their first director of analytics, Anthony Triche. I might be pronouncing his name wrong, from PFF. I know nothing really about who he is or what his role is. Well, you know me, guys. I love the embrace of some new ways of thinking, and that analytic aggression paid off. In this game, eventually, I think it gave this young offense the jolt of confidence it needed to kickstart that run game. So was I hard on Marcus in last week's preview? Yeah, I was. Did he make some progress in winning me back over? Absolutely. Analytic aggression, and then with style. Old white pants Freeman with an okey doke on me. By the way, those white pants. Our text thread had the phrase man rocket bounced around. Let's embrace that. We have a sexy coach. Winning is sexy. I know I gave a stat last pod about really only one head coach in the last 45 years who won a title within his first 3 years of ever being a head coach anywhere. Bob Stoops, Oklahoma, second year. Well, maybe there's a man rocket white pants wearing outlier effect we missed. Time will tell. But let's see. Those are the 5 stars. What I'd like to see more of. 3 things. Third, down to 1. Third, catch some punts. Can we just catch punts and fair catch them instead of letting them go 10, 15 yards? Maybe that's a nitpicky of me, but field position. Come on. Number 2, and a big one, is the downfield passing game, right? Really, our first look at Riley Leonard as our quarterback. And I talked about it last pod. He wasn't really known for his passing at Duke. He was a gritty runner, and we saw that. He's good at scrambling to run. I didn't see him great at scrambling to pass, which is a difference, right? He missed a gimme out of the pocket in the second quarter on 3rd and goal. I made a note of, and this game on offense kind of felt like one of those NCAA football video games you'd play. You're playing the computer. Some reason nothing's really working in the passing game, so you just kind of grit it out with the run option game. You jam it to your receivers on short hooks and outs. I don't know if that's enough long term, right? What does 23 points ultimately mean? It's not enough. Last year, Michigan, dominant defense, they gave up 24 points on 2 occasions, Maryland and Ohio State. So as good as Notre Dame's defense is, this offense will need to move the ball more consistently down the field. So I want to watch that, especially as we get into some more, I don't want to say cupcake games because that's just opening up. I'd like to go back and edit that out, but I said it. So some games that are not as, the games will be more favored in, let's say that. And what I'd like to see more of is just the last one, continued development on the offensive line. Great thing about stats, they came in with 6 starts. Now this offensive line is 11 starts. And they hit their stride, especially in the run blocking towards the end of the game. So this team, this unit has that behind their back now. And look, maybe there's something to be said for the fact that they, went across the board with newness. They could have started some of the older guys like Tosh Baker, some of the more experienced guys. This unit has that behind their back, and let's just see them continue to develop. Let's watch it and cheer it on. Now, overall, I call this a program-altering win because of what it means for us. We had a drought on the road. Georgia, Miami, Texas, Ohio State, Clemson, Louisville, USC. I mixed up the years there. But some of those games, you'd be like, hey, we played well enough to win. Some of these games, we did not play well enough to win. I think this is the best road win since Oklahoma in 2012. Yeah, I think it is. To be realistic, right, James, right, our A&M double expert, he did tell us that A&M, despite the 103,000 fans, toughest place to play, they do lose these games. They lost to Alabama at home last year. They lost to Ole Miss, Florida, and App State 2 years ago. Mississippi State 2021. Alabama and Auburn 2019. Clemson 2018. So yeah, am I here the pundit that picked A&M to, pundit is a kind word for me, right? That picked A&M to win, and then when Notre Dame wins, I claw back and say A&M wasn't as good as we all thought? I don't want to be that. Look, that's a great win for Notre Dame, a program-altering win with how they did it on the road, everything considered. Do I need to recalibrate my prediction for the season? I thought they'd lose this one. Does my 10-2 in the regular season take me to 11-1? Yeah, it has to. This schedule is trash. Just keep the boys focused, Marcus. And keep looking good doing it. Even if it means white pants after Labor Day. Okay, segue time. Doodaloo, doodaloo, doodaloo. Yes, little Wayne's World for you. Fantasy football. We'll split this into a section for the casuals at the start, and something for the grinders, the hardos. So what is fantasy football first? Fantasy sports in general. They're basically a way for fans to feel even more involved in the sports they watch. A commissioner sets up a league, there's a certain number of teams, each person gets a team. Then there's a draft or an auction for each team to get players, real live players. And in quotes, my team plays someone else's team each week with the real stats that the real player puts up in real life. Those stats get added for all the guys at each of our teams, and voila, our fantasies are fulfilled. We're in charge. We call the shots. We develop rivalry, smack talk. There's a trophy at the end. There's several variations and flavors of fantasy sports. We won't get into all of them here, but all the same gist. All right, where did it start? I believe it started with rotisserie baseball was the name for it. Predated the internet. Guys with snail mail lineup changes. Now that's commitment. My dad's first cousin, Dan, Big Dan, would tell me stories as he was involved in this. He also introduced me to the baseball encyclopedia for the first time. That accelerated my love of stats. For youngins out there, before Baseball Reference or Fangraphs, there was a giant 500, maybe more pages, an almanac. Everyone's stats from every year. I loved it. Now, how did I get into fantasy? Well, I've been playing so long, the origins are, quite frankly, a little blurry. But let's look at my Yahoo profile. All right, it goes back to 2001. My team names were Dre's Destroyers, Rough, and Nueva York Pedos. Creative young Dre. Mostly baseball leagues, a little bit of basketball. But I actually remember getting more involved in simulated sports when I was even younger than that. Now, that's very similar to fantasy sports, except a computer game engine simulates the stats. So the same setup as fantasy sports, largely just not real stats, simulated stats. And so you're not as reliant on like real time, which can be a plus. You can go faster, you can go slower. Why does fantasy sports matter, and why do we play? Now, why does it matter from the business of sports perspective? Fantasy sports, and let's focus on football specifically, undeniably contributed to the boom in sports interest in business over the last 2 decades. A Nielsen media research study in 2015 showed fantasy players watch an average of 3.1 hours more NFL programming per week than non-players. 3.1, that's like a full game or a few if extra full-hour episodes of Good Morning Football. That translates to dollars. And in general, think of, if sports just has fans of the one team, you're just going to watch that one team's games. My fantasy teams have players from 5, 6, 7, 8 different teams. So I gotta watch Thursday, I gotta watch Sunday, I gotta watch Monday night. Like, I'm exaggerating, but it's ironic because the fantasy sports fan gets looked down upon sometimes by some fans that aren't into it, or the players or team management. But we bring a lot of interest, a lot of dollars to those players and those team managers. But I think more interesting is, why do we play as individuals? Could get philosophical here. I know I'll get either eye rolls or head nods, depending who you are. I doubt there's an in-between. But to me, fantasy sports straddle from a fun hobby to a ritualistic camaraderie. That's a phrase, Dre. Fun hobby. Think of, people that like watching sports, want something more to follow besides just the team, or just the love of watching the game. If you're into strategy, it's like a strategy board game, right? Figuring out what pieces fit where. How do I have too many wide receivers, not enough running backs? Do I make a trade? If you're into math, numbers, or statistics, right? This is some of the best ways. I know. Many of my friends get their kids involved. Teachers get their students involved. It's a great way to learn some basic math and counting. And of course, there's the competitive nature and the gambling aspect, right? Of just, having something to give you a buzz, give you an itch, and to beat the other guy, right? I beat you this week. I got the trophy this year. I'm more interested in the ritualistic camaraderie. I think it's fantasy something to keep community, to keep people connected in what seemingly becomes more and more a disconnected world. To keep your friends or family close or make new friends. I've been part of leagues with work colleagues, with high school friends, college friends, grad school friends, extended family, random people. You see, this is so important. I follow Sahil Bloom on X. I find him a creative, original thinker on a lot of topics. Many topics are in business, but life topics too. He stumbled across and shared a chart in the past year or so in which someone had researched how much time we spend with certain people, certain types of people on average throughout our life, throughout our different ages. Eye-opening insights that go beyond fantasy sports. But look, a lot is predictable. Lots of time with your parents and siblings when you're young, and then that tails off. No time with your partner, obviously, until you meet them, and then consistently a lot of time with them until you're quite old. Children. The time you spend with them peaks in your 30s and 40s, and then tails off. Co-workers, interestingly enough, starts in your 20s, remains high till you retire, and even in your 50s, you may actually spend more time with your co-workers than your partner. There's another really important one. It's friends. Friends peak at a little over 2 hours per day on average, right? When you're in your college years. And by the time you're 30, it drops to about 45 minutes per day and stays there. These are all averages, right? Average in a week. So find a reason to keep spending time with friends, especially the special ones. And fantasy football could be one of those rituals that does that. My college friends from Duke, tight group, all of them idiots, yours truly included in that. We've ritualized our annual reunion around our league's fantasy football draft. A persistent text message thread follows throughout the year, full of vigorous arguments over trades that should be vetoed, or cheap shots when guys get injured. The championship culminates with produced slideshow content leading up to a live Zoom watch. I'm really not so sure our bonds would be as tight if we didn't have fantasy football. Or you can make new friends. On my recent flight back from our Duke draft in Dallas, Texas, I struck up a convo with a new friend who was traveling to New York for work. He's a fan of Oklahoma football, the New Orleans Saints, so he helped give me some pointers as to why Derek Carr was a bad pick I made. He travels for contract work, and he actually would love to get involved into coaching football. We would have never met or talked if I didn't pop open my fantasy auction prep sheet on my laptop and piqued his eye, and he asked about it. I asked him why he plays fantasy football with his friends. He says, one word, camaraderie. So there you go. A lot of important good that fantasy football can bring. Okay, this is the part where we switch. We switch to hardo mode, to the grinders. You want to listen to this if you play. If you're not going to play, feel free to tune out. I'll give my thoughts on the best settings for a fantasy football league I found, and then also we'll get into some of my stone cold locks for the year in terms of projections. So, if you're a commissioner or you're in a league, I found Superflex or 2Q quarterback league. It opens up so much more, right? What is the most important position in the real NFL? It's quarterback. And in any of these one quarterback leagues become the standard, diminishes the value of the quarterback completely. The Duke League, I think, it's probably been 8 years, 12 years, maybe more. We've been doing Superflex. And geez, we have to scrounge for the second quarterback, whether it's Matthew Stafford or Daniel Jones. I think only 10 to 20% of leagues are Superflex. Really think about adopting it. It opens up even that much more kind of strategy. And that goes with my second point of, tinker with your rules and settings so that it balances the positions. Like we do 0.33 PPR. PPR is points per reception. 1 point per reception, that favors receivers or catching running backs that catch passes way too much. And it's important, right, to keep the positions balanced, because then it makes it harder to decide what's the optimal strategy. Keep making the league realistic, right? And match what matters in real life. We've added negative point penalties for quarterbacks that throw interceptions that get returned for touchdowns. You know what? Because those are a lot worse than other kind of interceptions. So really, the more you can mimic real life, I think with fantasy, makes it feel that much more important and real. And the last thing on the draft I'll say is just play auction. And I get it. If you're into this just to have fun and do the camaraderie, and you're not into the strategy part, yeah, preparing for an auction, right, where everyone gets $200 at the start. You don't do the snake draft. You have to really think about what dollar value you want to give. It is such a fun exercise. Prepare for an auction, to get into it, to not know where it's going to go, to adjust, to make fun of people that make bad picks, and do drafts in person too, right? Get together when you can. These are the fun times. All right, those are my thoughts on the best leagues. Now, okay, my stone cold locks for the year, my fantasy advice. This is at risk, knowing I have a couple more drafts going ahead, but I care about being authentic with the Cleats by Dre listener, then might get over my colleagues. But look, my advice overall is just use rankings. Don't try to create your own custom rankings and projections. I've tried. Unless you have a statistics background, you'll spend a lot of time and not do any better than the best guys that do this 24/7. There's an overload of professional rankers out there. It's not like back in the day where you'd have to buy a magazine. And I give credit to a site like Fantasy Pros for helping us evaluate the rankers out there. Right? They tell you who's the most accurate rankers year after year. So you're doing a disservice if you don't review who the top rankers are last year, the previous few years, and just ride those 1, 2, or 3 guys for your content all year. Championships will come. So if you stuck with me this long and you play, let me give you some of my guys that I love, and I'm already rostering a lot. And what I'll do, I'll give you their average draft position so we could look back and see did my prognostication come through? Did they outperform or did they not? I have 7 names here. All right, quarterback. I got Dak Prescott. He's going as quarterback 10 right now. I don't know exactly what he finished as last year, but I think it was 3 or 4. He was on fire with CeeDee Lamb towards the second half of the year. I know he stunk in the playoffs, but guys, it doesn't matter for regular season. I don't understand how he can be that far back. Let me just do a quick glance. Who's going above him? I mean, Jordan Love, everybody loves. Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, if he stays healthy. Burrow, again, a risk. I mean, there's a lot of good guys above him, but I don't see a reason that Dak should be dropped so far. I'd happily take him higher up. The other quarterback name I have here, he's boring. But Trevor Lawrence is going as quarterback 16. I think people have gotten kind of bored and expected the next John Elway when he was picked. He's still young. I mean, a peak could still be coming. I know we guys are going high upside with for Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. I get it. But Trevor could still be hitting that ceiling soon, and he does run the ball. They got some new weapons at wide receiver, right? They got Brian Thomas, the rookie everybody loves. I think Trevor's going to outperform QB16. 3 running back names. One guy I've already gotten in both the leagues I've drafted, and that's James Cook with the Bills. He's going as 14. I'm looking at half PPR scoring. He's going as 14, yeah. I had Cook... I think I traded for Cook in one league last year. Then I traded him away. The reality is the Bills turned into a running team the second half of the year. Yeah, Josh Allen got all the touchdowns. But over that period too, Cook became a bell cow. And it really got a lot of the rushes, a lot of receptions and targets. Touchdowns didn't come, and Josh may always take away touchdowns, but I think Cook belongs in the A-chain, dare I say, Jahmyr Gibbs territory. Maybe I'm stretching a little too far, but I would leapfrog him over Rashad White, Josh Jacobs, Isaiah Pacheco for sure. So I'll go higher than 14 on James Cook. Another young running back I'll go higher on is Najee Harris. running back 23 right now for the Steelers. Up and down first few years in the league. A lot of people saying Jalen Warren's the better back. I always like in fantasy to pay attention to whether it's the second half of the previous year or the last 4 games. He was a workhorse in Pittsburgh. We know they're not going to throw the ball, but he became a workhorse running back. He's still young. I can see him ending up top 15 as long as he stays healthy. I think he'll outperform. And another somewhat popular one among the experts, not showing up in the rankings though, is Blake Corum of the Rams. Right now, running back 41. I watched him in college a lot at Michigan, and every time I saw him run, I was like, that's the best college running back. He hits the hole, and look, Michigan's offensive line was incredible. They opened up a lot of lanes. But he hits the hole, and he takes it to the house. I loved Kyron Williams at Notre Dame. He was a great college running back. He was picked in the 5th round, and I think McVay loves him. I don't think he's going to get benched. But there's a chance. They used a 3rd-round pick in Corum. That's better draft capital, which means quite a bit. There's a chance this is an even timeshare in a great offense for running backs. There's a chance Kyron gets injured, of course. He's injury-prone. I just think Blake Corum is probably the top upside running back. And at 41, I'll take a shot at him going above that. 2 wide receivers to bring it home. The first one, another young guy. 2 young guys. I'll go Tank Dell out in Houston, going as wide receiver 29. He came on with C.J. Stroud middle of last year. Then he got banged up. So people forgot about him. I think he missed the last few games. Even when him and Nico Collins were healthy, Tank Dell was the guy. Tank Dell, was it per play or, scoring touchdowns. I know Stephon Diggs is coming in, but CJ has something special with Tank, and I'll gladly take the discount at 29 and roster him wherever I can. And the last one is just kind of one of those simple rules where if the best quarterback in the league gets the fastest player in the draft, I'm interested. So Xavier Worthy, wide receiver at 37. We all saw the wide receivers the Chiefs had last year, and I know, Rashee Rice was strong last year. Hollywood Brown is there now, a little banged up. But Xavier Worthy, that's a boom-bust kind of pick. I think it's a boom if you give Mahomes that kind of speed. So I see him going above wide receiver 37 towards the end. So that's it. Dak, Trevor, James, Najee, Blake, Tank, and Xavier. There's the secret to success, folks. Good luck in this year's drafts, in the auctions. Have some fun. Reach out to your buds when you play, in the matchup. Give them a text. Make some friends. Keep some friends. Let's have some fun. Let's have a great fantasy football season. Okay, folks, that's the episode. Thanks so much for listening. As always, please continue sharing, following, rating, reviewing, sending me feedback. We're now on Instagram and we're on X. I'll put the handles on the show notes. Take care until we talk next time.